Yeah, so the plan for today is that we take a look on the files. I mean, how do we read the files? How do we use the data files in C# and programming in general? Why do we need them? And how are they used? So yeah, this is about the files. This will be the first thing, and yeah, so we also have the integration with the database out of it, for you to remind how do we need to work with the databases, and so this will be related to the topic about the files we have. So we will see how the data migration should be implemented, and then you have the practical task. You can then work on your practical task on the events and delegates. Yeah, and then so before we start, then I will remind what did we have last time. Yeah, on Thursday. Yeah, so then let's start. Let's start. There's no presentation, so I will describe everything as it is. Let me maybe open some data. Just accidentally closed the folder I wanted to open. So one moment. It's almost here. One moment, I'm searching for the files. I accidentally closed the folder. It's okay, moment. Okay, so I found it. Okay, let's just be. Okay, so I'm sharing some files with you. So just because we'll use them. Right. Okay. So this is just example. So on in software engineering, in software solutions like the applications, websites, and so on, we always have the data. So data is the key point for us. Yeah, and then everything is based on the data. We cannot run any application without simply knowing the data. On the practical examples, on the test examples, just for the testing purposes, of course, we can hard code the data here. We can hard code the users. We can also enter them from console. But the thing is that usually we must work with the data, which needs to be so data is there, and the key part is that the data needs to be stored somewhere. Right? We cannot just simply take data from nowhere. It needs to be stored here. That's also the part of this. And yeah, so the main thing is, how can we store the data and how can we exchange the data? Yeah, because so the storage of data, I hope it's clear. We should have some kind of files which store some kind of data. And then the key part is that the data, of course, okay, we have the files, we have the data, that's fine. But the thing is that when we work on the software applications, we need to be able to read this data, right? And the thing is that if let's say I have taken I shared some files, where you can see the countries. Yeah, so just the data about the countries. So so there are just a few files. Okay, so we have. I think I need to change the encoding. Yeah, so encoding is also important. We talk about it, but the thing is that we have the data. Yeah? So what do we see in this file? Yeah, we see it has the header line. Yeah, we call it the header line with the columns, which represent the data stored under each column. Yes, so we have ID, name, capital, city, currency, GBP, and if the record needs to be deleted or not. About deletion we'll talk later, but yeah, the thing is that we have this data structured, we have columns by column, we have the data stored column by column, and each column represents some kind of data, some kind of part of the data row in this case. So, and the thing is that basically, okay, let's assume that the program does understand this file. And so the program can recognize what should be here. But let's say what will happen if I delete one column or if I add one column. So in this case, this will make the problems for the program. This may make the problems again. It depends on how the program is built, but this particular thing may seriously impact the execution of the program. So the thing is, the first point here is you can see that if we work with the data, I mean, if it's in this case, I take a look on the CSV file, we later on see Json files and Xml files, but the thing is that we have the strict data, which should be strictly stored in the way that the program expects it. So it's yeah, the program itself does not understand what you want to pass to it. So first thing said is the format of the data we have. So the program can understand it. Yeah. So and let's talk, and that's not only about the storage of the data. We also need to exchange the data in between the source, because I mean on practice, when you work on your software application, there may be many different sources and targets of your data exchanging. Yeah, for example, you may see that nowadays we have lots of integration with some external sources. Maybe you have some kind of social platform which uses social networks like sure, Facebook or whatever it is. Then, of course, such integrations are also needed, and the key part there is how do we need to exchange the data. Like, let's assume we have, okay, let's take the same Facebook, because I think it's quite popular from the perspective of software engineering. Now, yeah, so let's say it expects some kind of data to be received, and there should be the strict format how the data exchanging should happen in between, and let's say Facebook and the source application. So, like, I mean, send data about some kind of just any information. Yeah. So, like, let's say you have the customers maybe on your application, then data needs to be sent there, or maybe some information about the products. Yeah, it should also be sent from one place to another. And this is, I would say, also, I mean, I did not really work with the ecom solutions a lot. I worked a little bit, and yeah, I talk with my colleagues, and basically the data exchanging is usually the struggling point for many applications. Again, let's say you want some, I mean, you with your application, you need to introduce your solution to the customer. Yeah, so customer says, please create me the say e-com solution, if it's the website or whatever it is. Yeah, please create me the e-com solution. I have some kind of legacy system. Yeah, because I mean, if we work with the customers, I mean, if we work with clients which do have the customers on their business, then the thing is that they should already have some kind of database. Yeah, they cannot just simply work with the customers without, I mean, writing the data on the paper. I mean, maybe it is possible, but I mean, the customers, the products they have, and so on, so data. I mean, for all the businesses, the data should already be stored somewhere. So in the easiest, most simple case, it's Excel file. In more advanced, it can be ERP system, some kind of ERP software system which stores the data for the business. And yeah, so again, we as the software developers, so the business comes to us and says, please, we want, let's say, e-com website to be created. And the first thing what we are talking about is, of course, there may be the money and all these things, but I mean, from the developing point of view, at first we need to know how we exchange data, and this is usually one of the most complicated points in the communication between us developers, those who develop the solution, and our customers, because usually there may be very different data sources for them. Like, let's say they use one Excel, they use another Excel, another one, and also differently formatted files, differently formatted sources, which are different, and we as developers, we need to integrate all these sources. Yeah, because I mean, the thing is that for our system, we need to, I mean, not we, but our application needs to be able to, I need to open the file. Okay, maybe, yeah, I guess we should never use Internet Explorer, so I will close it. Yeah, I mean, also for web development, Internet Explorer, especially for web development. Yeah, I do have. Okay, yeah, please close. Yeah, okay, I think we should never use Internet Explorer, but let me try another data formatting. Oh, it's a data opener. Okay, maybe I'll open. I'll put post, I guess it should be fine. Yeah, hold on. Let's go here. Okay. So yeah, many different sources, and different sources may have different format of the files. And yeah, so this is the problem. We usually need to handle this thing. So what do we need to know? Firstly, we need to know where and what kind of the data we expect. The problem is that sometimes the data is a little bit, say, maybe chaotic, or not really clear, and let's say the same source may produce many different data formats on files. One example, yeah, I usually talk about it, but it's quite educational example for the developing of the software application software programs is that I had example. So I worked. We had a project on one very large customer. Yeah, it was the leasing solution, a very large leasing solution, and so there's the leasing solution, and they have their partners, vendors, their suppliers. Yeah, so those who are their partners, yeah, on their solution. And then the task for us was to create the integration between the partner and our solution. So basically the thing was that the partner sends us the data, and the data was XML file, and based on this data we had to create a solution which creates the document inside the system. So basically it stores the data in our system, data we expect. And the thing was, what did they do? They just simply gave us, as I remember, there were 3 XML files, which were absolutely different. They were all on Dutch language, so we did not understand anything there. And based on these 3 basically random files, because they had different structure, we had to develop the program which can read data and store it inside our system. Yeah, so that was a struggling point. At the end, there were some crazy conversations with them, and the result finished nowhere. But yeah, the thing is that the data we as the system expects discussions there may be quite complicated. So yeah, and so that's why I just opened XML files. So for XML files, yeah, so again, here I shared 3 most, maybe, at least from my experience, most used data file formats, data file exchanging formats. It is CSV, it is JSON, and it is XML. So the thing is that so the thing here is that yeah, here we have the countries. We have the countries, and we have like several countries. So basically, we have the list of the countries, and each country has, in this case, has the name, capital city, currency, and GDP per capita. And yeah, so we have this specific file format. So what can be done here? So let's say there may be another parameter, which is maybe independence year or something like that. So yeah, each maybe I'll just explain this. And yeah, so each file format, yeah, basically how the XML files are constructed. So maybe each file format has different rules, different way of storage. And again, why do we need them? Why do we need different files? Because there are many different tools in all the programs, which in all the programs and all the applications, most of the applications, which can read and understand these files. And that's why they're widely used in the programming. So yeah, and let's start with XML files. So XML files are based on the tags. And so everything in XML files is based on the tags. And they have the structure which works in the way that, first of all, we have the root tag. Root tag will always be here. Yeah, it can be only one. We cannot have multiple root tags. Let's say we have countries here and countries here. So this would be incorrect file. Format. The first rule of the XML file is that there should be one root element. Yeah. So and again, for each tag, we need to have the opening tag and the closing tag. Yeah. So if I open the tag, it should be closed. Same here. I open the tag country. I close the tag country. I open the tag country. I close the tag country. Yeah, so root element should be only one unique, and then there can be the child nodes, child elements, and of course child elements. Child elements can be multiple. Yeah, so and they also should start with type. In addition, for each tag, we can add the attributes. Yeah, we can add the attributes. In this case, I have the attribute ID for the tag country, and then the same I can have subtags for the subtag. I mean, not the subtag, but the child nodes for the current node. Yeah, and then in this case, I mean, I can have even deeper structure, so it's not there are no restrictions how deep your XML structure is, but I mean, I guess you understand technically. If the deeper the structure is, the more complicated for the program it is to process such data file. Yeah, so the simpler the file is, the easier it is to work with such technically to work with such file. Yeah, and again we can have the tag, and under the tag we can have the data. The data, the text located under this, stored under this tag. Yeah, so this is about the structure of XML file. There's also there are the validation structures for XML. Yeah, so yeah, basically you see here we have the structure. The structure is that we have the node countries, and we have the subnodes and sub elements. And yeah, so this is the structure. This is the structure, and let's say that we have the situation when something from the structure disappears. So the question may be, is the structure correct or not? So and yeah, so and we have, there is the way how to validate it. So there are the special, for XML, there are the special validation structures. So they're called XSD. I do not have example with XSD. I do not have specific examples, so I will quickly show you on Google how do they look like. By the way, yeah, I think we can create. There are lots of different online tools, so you can search for them. So online, when you want to work with XML, JSON, or any other file types, such popular file types, you can create or convert them online from XML. Yeah, so there are definitely such tools. My internet is logging out of it, so let me close some applications maybe. Okay. Okay, better. Okay. And, okay, closed. Closed the application, should be better. So yeah, for example, I can say XSD generator online from XML. Okay, I think that we can select this one. Yeah, so you can search for lots of different tools online. They are free, and you can easily use. If you want to convert, let's say, from one file format into another, there are lots of different converters. We'll take a look on them, and it's quite easy to use them. Close many more applications. Mhm. Okay. Okay, so you can copy paste the text of your XML here, or you can select the file. So this is up to you. Let me maybe select the file. And open the let me open the file. So here's the file, and use UTF-8. Now let's generate XSD. Where is it? Okay, so where is this? Okay, maybe let's change the new window. Better. Close maybe some tabs. It's my internet. It's not the internet, I guess. It's the computer. Okay. It's almost usually takes less time. Okay, now I'll also close Visual Studio. Right now, we'll later on open it. Use. It's really so hot. Come on. So it's crazy. Okay, let's try again. Or is it frozen or what? Okay. So it's really frozen. Maybe I'll try one more time. Guess it's just my computer. So because I use this free formatter a lot, and it's fine. It's really so slow. Okay, let's try one more. Let's try this one. Or this one. Yeah, so the thing is that this XSD file is the file type, it's a special file format which can validate if the XML, which can validate if the XML you're using, if it has correct format or not. So let's upload the file here. Okay, so it's here. Open it, hope it will be better. Yes. Load, yeah. Okay, so very nice. Very nice, and here we have XSD schema. Basically, XSD files, they're also the XML files. And what do they do? Let's have a look. So in this case, you see that it says that I expect the element countries. Okay, so then we say that there is the complex type and there is the sequence of countries. Okay. So it has the sequence of countries, and then it has, I mean, it is the complex type. That means it's not just a simple one element, it has multiple elements there, and there we have the sequence of the elements. Again, we have, let's see, name, capital city, currency, GDP. Yeah, so this says basically that we have such attributes to expect. Yeah, of course, here we don't have the values, we don't have all the elements, all the loops here, not those, but all the items. Yeah, like if we have multiple items, we don't have all the items on the right, because the right one is just simple to validate the structure. So, and also many different programming languages, they have the tools to compare the actual XML file against the schema, against basically what to expect. Yeah, so we can validate this way. We can validate if the XML file is correct. Maybe I will download SSD so we can later on check it. Right, yeah, keep it. That's fine. Okay. So continues. Okay, so this is about XML file. Yeah, by the way, we can also mention which attributes to be optional, for example, which should be mandatory. It can also be checked, and yeah, because the thing is that some attributes we may delete them, and this may be fine. Yeah, so there are mandatory attributes mandatory elements and attributes which should be there, and there can also be the optional elements and attributes. All right, so then we have, this is about XML files. So maybe we will not talk much about them. So for CSV, yeah, so again, we describe this, it's quite simple. So both XML and CSV files, they are the text files, so you can basically open them all using the text editor. Okay, so if I open this, yeah, basically I open them with Notepad and I simply see it as the text. Yes, so basically it means that this is the text file I can read. I can simply read as, again, let's say the string. So let's imagine this is the string, which then can be read. So this is also the most important. Okay, do we have the questions about XML files? Okay, if not, then yeah. Also, where the XML files are used, I mean, they can be used as they obviously can be used as the data storage, so we can store the data there, like in this case. And usually you see that they are used to store some kind of metadata of the some kind of let's say applications or projects. Yeah, for example, under each .NET project we create, you see that yeah, for example, if I open one of them, then you can see that CS project file is actually the XML typed file. Yeah, so usually XMLs are used as the setting files for the applications or some kind of different setup. Yeah. So This is what they usually use, but of course they can be used to store the data, to exchange the data, like to send the data from one system to another. XML files there can be done. So okay, if there are no questions about XML, then I would like to also talk about the last file formats. And yeah, by the way, just also due to yeah, I will talk about JSON file format, but so just to directly show you that we can always convert different data formats from one to another. So let's say we want to get JSON file, so I can convert my XML file into JSON file. Okay, so my free converter is very slow today. Okay, let's try another one. And there are lots of different converters. You can easily find them in the internet. And so here I can upload, say, the XML file. And from here I can easily convert it to JSON file. So let's then talk about JSON files, and I will open it locally just to make it easier for you and for me. Okay, so here it is. Yeah. So how the JSON file look like? First of all, basically, what does the JSON means? JSON is JavaScript objects notation. And so basically, the format itself, it comes from JavaScript. And what the JavaScript is, it's quite easy. If I go to any website, I again go to the inspect element. So I can go to console, and from console I can, let's say, execute JavaScript, but let's say that, yeah, basically every time you open execute the website, you have the data. Basically, I'm not really sure how technically it's stored, but the data is stored and used using JavaScript. Yeah, so basically you can go to any website, and maybe you can also execute some JavaScript functions, let's say alert flow, and you get the notification from the window. Yeah, so basically using this way we can control the window. So can I close this? I'm not sure what will happen here. Okay, and this is, but anyway, so when I access this, so it means that I access the current window as the object. And so go to console, you can do it on your browser. And the thing is that here I have the information about the current window. Yeah, so I'm not really sure what is the data stored here, but it can be different for different windows. But the thing is that it is stored in the JavaScript format, and basically JavaScript has, the concept of the JavaScript data is quite simple. I would say it has the objects, like in this case you see that this is the same as in C#, we say this is the current object website, this is the current, usually it's the window, maybe something else, it depends where you are, but yeah, so in this case it says this is the window, and the window has, everything starts with the window, and window same as the objects in, for example, C#, and the functions. And so we see we have the attributes, and if we have f, so this means that the current attribute is the function. So basically, the functions and the variable, sorry, the elements, they are all, they are all the elements. That's why JavaScript is called a functional programming, because the functions can be the same as the delegates we talked about. In C#, there can be taken as the values, as the variables, and then transported from one place into another. Yeah, and this is usually, that's why we talk about the handlers. Yeah, so basically, then the function is assigned to, let's say, the field, and then on the element, on the field, and then when we press, let's say, on the button, then the corresponding function is called. This one I show you last time. So yeah, let's go back to the object notation. We have the object and we have the elements. Yeah, and the elements are, let's say they're just simply the attributes of the objects. And the interesting thing in JavaScript is that I can dynamically add the elements to the coding. So let's say I have my element, and let's say I assign a string my element. So and then then I can go to, I think I can always also see it here. Let's check. Okay, I don't see it here. Let's try again. I go to window. I go to okay, I think I need to search here. Okay, yeah, so you see I have my element here. So the interesting thing in JavaScript is that I can, again, when I have the objects, I can run the program, I can execute the code one by one, and I can also assign new elements to the objects. So as you see this way. So I can also assign the values, the elements. I can also assign the function. So let's say I have my function, which would be the function. Okay, it's logging now. Okay, should be the function of, let's say, integer x, and then same, I can return x times x maybe. I think. Yeah, don't need to use integer, I think. Here. Yeah, so don't need to use integer. So then I can call my function. So this is just a little bit of JavaScript, but so for you, just to so let's say we have 4, and yeah, so you see that 4 is squared here. So basically, yeah, this is what I want to say. In JavaScript, we have the objects, and the object have the elements. As I just said, they can be assigned runtime. So, and usually when we talk about JavaScript, then we have
We don't hear you.
We have several object types. So I mean, everything is based on the object.
Yes, the same. Arthur's no sound.
Same as, and basically JSON files.
Hello. You have muted yourself.
Notation. It means that these files are taken from the JavaScript. Yeah, so basically, the format of JSON files is the same what you see under the JavaScript. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just realized that. Yeah, so I'm back. I'm back here. I'm back here. Sorry, let's just. I lost my machine. Yeah, okay, so I'm back. back. And yeah, so again, JavaScript, we have the objects have the elements, yeah, and the functions or any other type of elements, they are all the elements. And so this is why why JSON is called JavaScript object notation. It is because the file format is based on the JavaScript objects. Yeah? So you see we have the object, and yeah, basically we store the objects using the curly brackets, and then again we see we have the object and we have the element under the object. And so we have the object and we have the elements, and objects are stored this way. So what do we have? We have the name of the file can start using the object, so it means that the whole file itself is the object. Yes, yeah, I guess that should be correct if I'm not mistaken. And I'm not too sure if all the JSON formats expect the starting was the curly bracket. Let me open the moment. I'll quickly double check in. It's not why if we always need the brackets or not. So let me quickly double check this. Yes, I think. On the other hand, I think it depends. Yeah, it depends. There can be and cannot be the starting. So it's usually up to the file. Sometimes there can also be the array brackets. These brackets are for arrays, but yeah, so let me explain one by one. So first of all, we have the object. In this case, let's say that, yeah, we have the curly brackets. Curly brackets mean that they open the object. And so we have two types of brackets used for the JSON files. The curly brackets means that the elements stored there. Yeah, so we have the opening bracket and closing bracket means that this is the object. Yeah, this is one exact object. Yeah, start of the curly bracket means the beginning of the object, and the right curly bracket means the close of the object. Yeah, start and the end of the object. Right. So this is where we store the object. The second type of bracket is the square bracket, and the square bracket means the left bracket means it is the start of the array, yeah, and the right bracket means the end of the array. Right. So basically, using these square brackets, we store the arrays. And same as in C#, the brackets have many elements. So there's one element, another element, and each element is they are all separated by commas. The same is for the elements of the object. Yeah, so in the object we have the elements. These are the attributes of the object, the members of the object, and yeah, they are also, each one is separated by a comma. The last one, I think we can. No, I'm not sure if we can separate the last one with comma. I think, yeah, the last one is not needed. Yeah. I'm not sure if this will always be a mistake. Again, it depends on where do you work with JSON file, but yeah, usually the last one should not have comma after the last member, but all the other members, they should be separated at comma. Yeah, so again, opening, closing of the object. For the arrays are also separated at comma. The elements of the arrays are separated at commas, and then yeah, so we have the first element, second element. So all these elements are started and opened and closed. Yeah, and under the arrays, we can store these elements. Yeah, so this is the point, and the interesting thing about the type again, yeah, we can store, we can have strings and we can have booleans. For the numbers, there is no, yeah, so for JavaScript, there is no such thing like integer, double, or whatever. There is only the numeric type. Yeah, all the numeric types are numeric, are the numbers, and JavaScript does not care if the type is double, integer, or whatever it is. It will always be numeric. And the elements are the members are named inside the quotation marks, yeah, so as the strings, and then the values, yeah, so the name of the element and the value. Yeah. So and yeah, so there should be the colon in between, which will then assign the value to the element. Yeah, and there is basically nothing more. Yeah, regarding then also for the XML, we talked about the XSD structure, which can validate our XML if it is correct or not, if some elements are missed or not. For JSON, it is more complicated. Yeah, I worked on a little bit on the research, not the research, but I was working on one article last year, not mistaken, which was related to the data set format of the massive JSON files, JSON file data sets. So usually it means that, let's say, yeah, because usually when the JSON file is received, there is no one strict structural format, how it should look. Because for XML we have XSD, which can validate. For JSON, it is more free format, I would say. We can exchange, the same as an XML. We can exchange the sequence of the elements. We can again have the element which is not which does exist in one place and does not exist in other places. Like again, let's say I delete one element from one attribute from one element, and then I keep it in another element. Also for the JSON files, we don't have let's say the attributes in the way as we have in XML. So in XML, you remember we can open the we can have the tags. Yeah, they can be stored this way. And for the JSON files, there is no such option. Yeah, we can denotate using add. Yeah, we can denotate that this is the attribute, but I mean, in general, there is no such specific way to define that. Yeah, and so for JSON datasets, it really requires some investigation, also maybe technical investigation to determine if the file format is correct or not. If basically to define what the file format we expect. Yeah, because usually for XML files we can define on the top some properties. We can define the XSD schema to be validated against. For JSON files, we don't have such setups. We only have the data as it is. Yeah, also because in JavaScript the file format is also quite free. Yeah, so again, you can see we have so we have the element, the member of the object E, of the current window object, and you see if the element is object, it is then defined inside the curly brackets. For the array, if the function, we don't have the functions in JSON files for the obvious reasons. Because the files, I cannot execute this particular file. I can only read it. So JSON files are needed only for read purposes, so I cannot have the function I can execute here for, again, obvious reasons. But so all the other things, what you see inside the JavaScript objects, you can meet them all in the JSON files. And then the key question is where the JSON files are used, and so this, for obvious reasons, as it stands for the name, JavaScript object notation, they are used when the JavaScript presents. Usually they're used when JavaScript presents. So it means that when we exchange some kind of data from or to the websites, there is the JSON file format which sends the data this way. Okay, maybe I'm not really sure. Now maybe I'll wait and I'll show you how this data is sent. But the thing is that from the web, and then send it to the backend. One moment, I can maybe just, okay, we have these requests, and if I'm not mistaken, these requests are sent using JSON file format. Again, to know why I'm not really sure about these requests, but the exchanging in between the usually JavaScript code or the let's say maybe some kind of JavaScript frameworks that you connect vector languages to the, and if it sends to the backend, the data is then sent using the JavaScript object notation files. Question from Maria: is it possible to do some operation with data like much directly in database? The database level. So what do you mean from the database? Because in the database we simply store the data. We don't do any operations there. We can have the SQL operations, you mean? I guess this is what you mean when we execute SQL queries. And I guess this is what you mean, right, Maria? When you execute SQL queries, you want to do some math operations. Because in the database we just simply store the files. And maybe if you want to execute some math operations, I mean it depends. It depends usually, because the thing is when you call SQL queries on practice, what does it usually mean? It means that you work usually, again, it depends. It depends because you may have a small data set, small database table, which maybe stores some 6 entries. There are maybe some kind of configuration entries, and you may have the table which, let's say, stores the transaction data, I mean the orders from your web shop, for example. And in this case, you'll have millions of entries there, hundreds of millions of entries there. And of course, in such case, like let's imagine if you want to do the or hundreds of entries, hundreds of thousands of entries, then of course on the SQL call it may have time. So I would say for the big data, if you call the query for the large data, usually maybe if you have the option to do it, then I think it's better to do it on the backend. If you don't have other options, because I know they're like sometimes the database may be not linked to the backend. Simply it means that the only option you have is to call SQL query, and of course, in such case, you have no other option but to do the calculations on the SQL. But the thing is that that in SQL it may be really complicated, and I have not even tried it in my experience to do some really complicated calculations. It is possible, as I know, but I never tried to do really complicated, maybe not just simply to do some basic math operations like add two or sum two elements. Like if you concatenate the elements, this may be fine. Yeah, but if you do really some complicated calculations, like not really complicated, but some real large conditions, then it will simply be a little bit complicated to write, and it will be more complicated to check it afterwards, because if you do the calculations in the program, then it is easier. You can simply debug, right? You can simply debug all these steps, but in SQL, I'm not really sure if there is some kind of option to debug. Just not lie to you, I was never interested in it, but as you know. So yeah, basically, if you have the option, Marie, then it's always better to do the math on the back end. If you have no other option, or if you have a simple calculations like maybe concatenate or add one, for example, yes, so you want to say return the data, let's say +1, yeah, or something like that, then I think this may be fine. It's usually fine. Okay, maybe let's now, and then we continue after that. What's the meter? 10:15.